So Alexander Volkanovski got knocked out in 2 rounds against Ilia Topuria at UFC 298. Or actually, should I say Ilia Topuria?
Good friend of mine, Ilia Topuria.
But anyways, Ilia Topuria was able to shine under the bright lights and is now the new UFC featherweight champion. Incredible performance and composure throughout the entire process, honestly. He did everything to try to set himself up to become a star, and he fully delivered. A lot of fighters actually wouldn't be able to go through with what Topuria was setting himself up for. I mean, my mans was taking manifestation to a whole different level. He went out and made a whole documentary called Road to the Belt. He changed his IG bio to 15-0 and UFC champion. He was in multiple interviews talking about how he wouldn't give any of the featherweight contenders any opportunity at the belt when he becomes champion. He was doing all of this before the fight when he wasn't even a champion yet. Like what? But at the same time, it is smart marketing because you're grabbing the attention of not only the hardcore fans, but also the casual ones. This is how you can truly set yourself up to become something big in the fight world. However, the price that you have to pay if you lose, or even worse, get completely knocked out, is something you probably can't even imagine. Especially in this world where it's a social media era and everyone is so inclined to troll one another. And in a way, Topuria was kind of following the McGregor script. During the press conference, he was trying his best to rile Volk up. He took his belt like how McGregor did against Aldo. Hell, he even took pictures with the belt before the fight started. But Volk was just completely unbothered. So heading into the fight, I posted another prediction thread on Twitter where I thought Volk was going to win by decision 49-46. And I was completely wrong. I always mention when my predictions are right, but this time, yeah, your boy was way off, man. I thought that Volk was going to come into this fight utilizing his whole package as a mixed martial artist. He primarily likes to operate as a striker, but in this fight, he can act as a well-rounded fighter. Ilia Topuria favors his boxing when he fights. He has very good punching mechanics and technique. Many of you might not agree, but if you watch the way he holds himself and his posture when he fights, it's very similar to Canelo Alvarez. Hands high, very tight and close, heavy on the base of their stance, moving their head side to side, counter-punching, it's all there. And when Topuria fights, he don't throw too many kicks. If he does, it's only calf kicks that he throws. So I thought Volk was going to be very strategic by chopping the legs, keeping the fight long, mixing in level changes, enforcing his output, and most importantly, throwing feinting techniques. And he was doing some of that, but however, there is a big problem, or actually there are multiple problems that persisted throughout the whole fight that we need to address for Volk. So the first thing that I want to talk about, and let's start with the champion, is the black line strategy. The keys that I put out for Topuria to win this fight is what he did to win the fight. I pointed out that he needed to vary his counter striking, his timing needed to be on point, he needed to cut off the cage and throw head-body combinations. Like I said, Topuria likes to throw his hands a lot, which is crazy considering that his base is actually grappling. But anyhow, what is the black line strategy? Well, if Topuria wants to effectively use his boxing to win, he's going to need to put Volk on his heels up against the cage where he can keep the fight in boxing range. If I show you a picture of a UFC cage, you can see an octagon shape in the cage. Topuria's objective is to keep Volk in between the black line and the cage. That's where he can have his best work. And he did by 1, being patient, but 2, using a ton of foot feints. Most guys in MMA would just follow their opponent around, or they open up too early and it gives their opponent an opportunity to cut an angle and reset. During the fight, when Topuria would foot feint, he kept drawing Volk out, but most importantly, he got Volk to back up closer to the cage. Another way he got Volk closer to the cage was by inching forward into range, but also simply just throwing combos. When the fight was in the center, that's where Volk was able to use his game plan of keeping the fight long. But when Topuria was throwing combos, that's where he would force Volk to retreat in a straight line towards the cage instead of throwing one punch and allowing Volk to easily just move and reset to the center. The second thing I want to talk about is Topuria's IQ and his ability to use his awareness to set up traps. Topuria is such a smart boxer in MMA. Throughout the entire fight, Volk was throwing a lot of lead attacks. So of course he was popping out that jab, and Topuria was constantly moving his head side to side. He was slipping on the inside and on the outside, and he was doing that for the majority of round 1. Then in round 2, when he kept seeing that jab over and over again, he would slip and take away that jab by landing the counter right hand. This is what I mean when I say awareness, the ability to see punches coming and react instinctively. And when you see a pattern over and over again, then you come up with solutions right on the spot. For an example, example, Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz. Tank sees the first punch land, he parries the second punch, and he counters the third punch. And that's what Topuria was doing once he saw that jab again and again. It happened in the same way just seconds before the finish. He slips inside, right hand counter. He slips outside, 3-punch combo, and then the finish. There were even times where he saw that lead leg kick from Volk when he kept throwing it. He was able to time the right hand and beat Volk to the target. This is what Topuria is good at and why he is so dangerous. So now shifting over to the former champ, let's talk about Volk's strategy of being elusive and trying to stick and move. It was clear as day of what Volk wanted to do. He threw a lot of lead attacks in this fight. That tells me that he wanted to keep the fight long and not allow Ilia to trade with him in the pocket. But if you notice, Volk was trying to throw lead kicks as Topuria would step into range. If you watch the fight back, you can see that whenever Volk saw that jab from Topuria, he would time a lead kick as Topuria steps in. My guess is that he wanted to use Topuria's boxing stance against him by trying to knock him off balance since Topuria is heavy on his legs. Then he should have tried to kick his calf instead of his thigh. But it also could just might be him just trying to just stick and move and not really wanting to open up and potentially getting hit, because there was not once where Volk tried to time a rear attack. Everything was like 97% lead attacks. I can probably bet that he threw less than a handful of right hands and rear calf kicks. He did land a nice southpaw cross, but besides that, not a lot of rear attacks, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But for the most part, Volk's strategy worked until it didn't. It felt like Izzy versus Pereira 1, where Izzy was just trying to stick and move and Pereira wanted to walk him down, and eventually he got caught, and it was the same in this fight. For moments in this fight, I actually thought Volk's lateral footwork was nice, but once Topuria started to get going, it became difficult just to maneuver around the cage. So now let's discuss all of the errors that Volk made and what he should have done in this fight. I thought one of the reasons why he didn't win this fight was his lack of feinting. Usually he's the type of fighter that would throw a variety of feints. Hip feints, jab feints, foot feints, level changes, uppercut feints. But in this fight, there was less of that. He did throw a few jab feints where he did manage to draw out Topuria's counter shot, but he just couldn't recognize what Topuria was trying to do. And I think it's because he was so focused on his own game plan that he couldn't make the adjustment to that read. He didn't make Topuria guess what he was doing. He didn't put enough possibilities in Topuria's head that he would punch him, kick him, or try to take him down. It was just punch and kick with the lead hand, and Topuria as a counter puncher got comfortable very quickly. Secondly, I thought him not throwing a lot of rear attacks hurt him the entire fight. Whenever Volk decided to throw a rear calf kick or a right hand, he was able to back Topuria up. In a fight where Topuria was trying to walk down Volk, in moments where he backed Topuria up was when he threw right hands and rear calf kicks. And this is a bit ironic because Topuria is known as the Matador, but he was actually the bull in this fight. To beat a bull, you obviously gotta play Matador, and that's what Volk was trying to do. But I've seen this story too many times, and it's always the same. At some point, you have to go and push the bull back and get your respect. When people say that you gotta be perfect in order to win, that's BS because it's not possible. You can't fight in order to not lose and expect to win decisively. Eventually, you're going to get cornered, and that's where things can get bad. But if you sit down on your punches and throwing combos to get your respect, then that's where the fight can become easier for you. You don't just try to stick and move and try to outpoint a great fighter who has a bull mentality to a decision. Look at Izzy versus Pereira or Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez. At some point, you gotta fight the bull and let him know that it can't be this easy to move forward. You gotta give him a reason to not move forward. That's what you gotta do. Lastly, I thought Volk staying tall and pulling his head out was a bad idea. Volk's boxing defense consists of a cross block along with a shoulder roll, similar to a Philly shell. However, boxers who use the Philly shell tend to stay tight in their guard. But Volk, the difference with him is that he stays out of his shell. And against a guy like Topuria, who likes to throw bombs over the top, that's not the brightest thing to do. Instead, what he should have done is drop down and avoid those big shots. He did it when Topuria loaded up for a naked left hook, and he dropped down, initiated a clinch, and landed some very good knees. Some people might say, oh, if you drop down, you can run into a knee, so they think it's a bad idea. And it could be, but at the same time, when was the last time you saw Ilia Topuria throw a knee? Yeah, you might be susceptible to a knee up the middle, but if you're fighting according to the tendencies, it's not a bad thing to do. If you get hit with a knee, then tough. That's when you gotta adjust. It's fighting. It's a chess game. You can't defend everything. Alright, so now let's break down the beautiful finish of this fight. You can see in the exchanges before the finish what Topuria wanted to do. Volk was trying to move to his left while jabbing, and Topuria was able to slip on the inside and fire a right hand over the top. When Volk threw another jab just seconds later, this is where he killed two birds with one stone when it came to my keys for Topuria to win. He very varied his counter-striking by slipping on the outside of the jab, and he threw a head-body combo to close distance. He threw a 2 to the body, a 3 up top, and a 2 again that kinda grazes Volk. But watch the footwork of Ilia Topuria, where he brings his feet with him, and not once does he ever break his stance. A lot of MMA fighters have horrible footwork. It's absolutely horrendous. You'll see so many fighters either cross their feet or literally run and punch, which is kinda sad. But with Topuria, you'll never see that. He uses correct footwork to advance and stay in his fighting stance. Another thing that Topuria did very well was once he got Volk up against the cage, you can see that he has his left hand framed on the left side of Volk's face. This is huge because what that does is that it lets Topuria find his distance and it blinds Volk. He can't see what's going on the left side of his peripheral vision. It's a similar concept when Izzy used his jab to frame against Pereira, where he couldn't see the right hand coming. This was almost the exact same thing, but at the same time, Volk had a lead collar tie while Ilia had a frame. As Volk tries to throw a punch or secure a tie plum, Topuria beats Volk to the target by loading up on a big right hook that lands on the chin. Some people were trying to criticize Volk for trying to act fast by securing a tie plum or not trying to guard himself instead, but he's not wrong. All of Topuria's KOs come from him being on the front foot, having his opponent up against the cage, and setting up his punches. If Volk decides to stay there for too long, eventually he's going to get hit. The best defense to that is to not be there in the first place, but if you do end up getting there, you gotta act quickly, just like Izzy versus Pereira too, where Izzy high guard baited and threw a counterpunch immediately. If Izzy decided to just stay there and just high guard, eventually he would have gotten caught, and there was an exchange very similar to the finish earlier in the round where Volk did secure a tie plum and it disrupted Ilia's rhythm and momentum. Some people also speculate whether or not Volk's chin is now gone because of his last fight against Islam, and it might be cracked, yes. But at the same time, Volk was moving into the punch from Topuria. You can see as Volk turns to try to either punch or secure a tie plum, he runs right into that right hook from Topuria. So is it a case of Volk's chin being gone? Probably, maybe, who knows? But at the same time, it was literally a picture perfect shot by Ilia Topuria. So I don't know, you be the judge, you tell me. So all in all, a great performance by Ilia Topuria. He did what he was going to do and he brought the belt to Spain. And that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say, and let me know, who do you think is next for Ilia Topuria? Drop a comment and let me know in the comment section down below. Now if you guys enjoy content that is related to combat sports, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. That would be greatly appreciated. And if you can't get enough of the content on this channel, please head down to the description of this video and follow me on my Twitter for more tweets about combat sports. And other than that, it's been Steven, signing out. Peace.